Hello, everyone. Wonderful to see you all this morning, and thanks for taking the time. Well, our Start with Culture. It's a very new non-for-profit company, which Julia and I founded during the times of the pandemic, as we really saw more needs for creating effective networks of people in the African music sector. And also our goal is to help African artists and musicians to build sustainable careers and get them on a global scale and market. From our experience, and that's why I'm just an introduction why we are here, from our experience working for over 10 years as booking agents and managers with artists, we saw a lot of, and we see a lot of different needs on funding. And we sometimes feel that a lot of programs offered don't really match the needs, or there is gaps and missing programs. So our motivation to do this is to get more players on the continent together to present their programs, and also to see if we can start and build a stronger network and work on more development of new programs, and really, bring artists, managers, agents, and funding institutions together and discuss. In this round, a lot of wonderful people. Maybe you can just quickly introduce yourself so we know who is there. So my name is Stefanie, and I'm Start with Culture, but also I run an agency called Delicious Tunes, and we do concert tours and management for artists. So then
quickly, I'm in the same boat with Stefanie, Delicious Tunes and Start with Culture, and I look forward to know who you are. Maybe we just start, maybe, I don't know, André is on my window, the next one. Maybe André, you do it, then it's a little bit guided.
Hey, hello, I'm André Roux. I'm Delicious and I got no tunes. I'm the managing director of IKS Cultural Consulting. We do research, quite a bit of research, which is available online. And we run a live music support program called Concerts SA since 2013. And we run a mobility fund that's become a digital mobility fund due to everyone knows why. Yeah.
Thank you. Then next on my screen is Isumi. Maybe Isumi, you let us know who you are.
Yes, hello. Good to see you all. I'm Isumi Rögner. I work at the Goethe Institute in the headquarters in Munich, and I'm responsible for the International Co-Production Fund, which I will present to you in a bit.
Okay, thank you. Then the next one is Violet. Please let us know who you are.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Violet Maila. I'm the projects manager at the Music in Africa Foundation, overlooking a number of projects, what we call our offline projects that run around supporting various elements, including indigenous knowledge systems, digital concert funding, and a few others that I will introduce to you later. I just do want to just say that I am working from a coffee shop, so do excuse the noise if it happens. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Then I have Mrs. Shark on the next window. The most exciting name in this round.
Hey everyone, my name is Masa Caroline. Mrs. Shark is a name that people call me because, yeah, it's just a tribal name. I'm a performing musician, singer-songwriter from Zimbabwe. And I'm excited to be part of this and to, just to converse and hear what's going on in the, with the artists and when it comes to funding and things like that. So I'm excited to be here.
Okay, thank you. So the next one is here, Mr. Marcus Gora. I'm happy to see you. Who are you?
Greetings, everyone. My name is Marcus Gora. I'm calling in from Harare. I am a cultural manager in general, but I work on multiple projects. I'm director at Festival Gallery. Harare, which is one of sort of the top 10 contemporary art space in Africa. And I have been working as a manager for a band called Mukumba, which is also a touring band, which has been represented by Delicious Tunes and supported by Start With Culture on their relief sort of fund that they, Solidarity Fund that they had launched last year. And I also run a music festival here called Jacaranda Music Festival in collaboration with a team. Yeah, I'm working multi sort of sectorally, but connected to the art space. So pleasure to meet you all.
Thank you. So next in my little pictures is George. Please, George.
Hi everyone, my name is George Achirifi Gogo, all the way from Ghana, and I'm the band leader for Ghanaian-based Afrofusion band, FRA. It's quite a new group. I'm sure the world will hear of the band very soon.
Okay, thank you. Next one, please, Tofa, introduce yourself quickly.
Hi everybody, I am Tofa Jax. I'm from Tanzania, and I am a singer-songwriter. I just mainly write music. I'm also a live performer. I'm more of the music side, and I work with Stefanie and Julia, all a team from Delicious Tunes, and it's really a pleasure to meet everybody. Yeah.
Thank you. So now we have a new member in our Zoom family. It's Jay. Hi Jay, nice to see you. Maybe we introduce ourselves, everyone, a little bit. So please, it's your turn now. Introduce yourself.
Hey, producer. Yeah, my name's Jay Rutledge. I am from Munich. I run a label called Out Here Records for the last 15 years, I guess. We released lately records by Mukumba, Santrofi, band from Ghana, and did a couple projects, cultural projects, funded projects. Are doing one now in Ghana, which also has some funding behind it, and are doing one funded by the German government, Neustart Kultur, which is a program here where we are putting together a record with Somalian music from the 70s, played by a band from London, musicians who fled Somalia and live in the diaspora there.
Thank you. Stefanie, if I'm right, I think Tommy got disconnected again. Maybe if she comes back, she's also an artist from South Africa. She took also part in the Solidarity campaign. So if she comes back again, she should introduce herself again. Okay, thank you so far. Stefanie,
Yeah, okay, I think I would want to hand over to Isumi, who I think prepared like a little presentation from one of the funds they do at Goethe.
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much. I will share my screen in a bit. And let me know if you can see. Yeah? Okay, perfect. Okay, so I will briefly talk about the International Co-Production Fund that I'm responsible for with my dear colleague Natalie Feldman. Just to let you know, this is just one program, one funding program of the Goethe Institute. We have a lot, and maybe you are also interested in other funding for touring, for example, but these are other programs, so I'm just talking about the co-production fund, and maybe we can talk about difficulties of the funding systems and so on as well later on. I'm very open to that. Okay, so the International Co-Production Fund was established in 2016. The Goethe Institute did fund collaboration or co-productions before that as well, but it was always the local Goethe Institute that funded the program or the production, and they have a very limited budget. So what we did is create this fund, which is in the headquarters in Munich, and everyone worldwide can apply for this funding program. It is aimed at performative arts. I will come back to that later, what kind of performative arts. And we are looking for the artistic collaboration between international and German partners, which means the performance at the end of the project is equally important like the whole process itself. We have no restrictions concerning the topic, so you can apply with any kind of idea that you have. The maximum amount you can apply for is 25,000 euros. And yeah, as I said, the administration is in the headquarters in Munich with a small team, but we also have a lot of help by the colleagues abroad in the Goethe institutes all over the world. Let me briefly introduce the award criteria that the fund has. So performing arts or performative arts include music, theater, dance, and interdisciplinary projects, and also all kinds of performances. So for example, we have one project right now in Senegal, and they include circus artists. We are aiming for good quality, so professional artists who have a certain relevance in their local scenes. This goes for everyone involved, and we are also not looking for nationalities. So you need one partner, one international partner, and one partner in Germany, but this German partner or the German co-producer, they don't have to be of German nationality. The important thing is that they are established in Germany and that they live and work here. And this goes for the international artists as well. We are looking for balanced partnership. That means that we don't need anyone being predominant in the whole process. We want equality. We want a good base where a profound interaction is possible. You need a solid finance plan if you are applying. Ideally, the overall costs are covered by 3 parts, so own resources, third-party contributions, and then the IKF or the co-production funding. We know that especially nowadays, own resources, or it is very difficult to provide own contributions, but we are very open concerning own resources. So if you have in-kind contributions, for example, someone who is providing you with technical equipment, or who says, okay, you can use our technician for the whole week. If you have rehearsal rooms for free, or someone who helps you, an institution who helps you with the marketing or PR of your project, then that counts as own resources as well. So you can list that in your application. And another criteria is that we need at least one performance outside of Germany. I know that most of you are musicians and in the music business, and you're dealing with concerts, records, recording, and touring. And this is somehow, well, we will definitely talk about this later on, but the co-production fund is really focusing on performances. So we do have, as you can see in a minute, we do have music projects, but the recording aspect cannot be the main aspect of the project. So we are really looking for the collaborative process of a project. So this is an overview of the rounds we had so far. So we had 10 rounds. Normally we have 2 rounds per year. Within 5 years, we had over 1,000 applications and 117 projects that we were able to support. And when you come to the artistic disciplines, it is divided, well, most of them, 1/3 of the whole applications or the project that we funded are interdisciplinary projects. And then we have almost equally projects, strictly music or theater or dance or performances, and just a small amount of musical theater, and the 6% are theater for young people. And this is, please don't be confused, because this is just an administrative division of the regions worldwide for the Goethe Institute. But you can see that the African continent is mostly green. So it's the sub-Saharan African region, which has 25 projects, actually more than 25, because this is just about round 1 to 9, and we have round 10, and there are projects from Tanzania as well, for example. So more than 25 projects in the sub-Saharan region, and then the Northern African part and Middle East, they have 14 projects as well. So yeah, this is because, as I said, everyone can apply. And we do have projects, for example, in Japan or in Northern America as well. But the main focus of the fund is for transition countries, actually. So yeah, this is the main focus of the fund. Some topics that we are constantly talking about, and maybe we can talk about later as well, because we are always open to yeah, ideas and how things are conceived abroad as well. So one thing is language. When it comes to the application, we know that it's difficult for some because you have to handle the application in English, and we are absolutely aware of the fact that this is not easy for everyone. But also when it comes to the collaboration itself, you should really think about language barriers. For example, talk about with your co-production partner, what kind of language are you using? Will you need some kind of translation at one point? Who is writing? Who is yeah, talking? And what kind of language is a good base for the whole project? Then you should always think about the project budget. Be aware of the responsibility that you have for other funding, for the artistic fees that have to be equal. Be aware of the workload and the responsibility of the whole administration and the management of the project, and also talk about the expectations that maybe we as the Goethe Institute have, maybe you as the partner abroad have, and also yeah, what is the goal? What is the ultimate aim of the whole project? How should the working conditions be? How is the workload divided in the group, in the production team? And then one thing that I'm pretty sure that we will talk about too is, how do I find a partner? Because I said you need a German part in this in order to apply, and we are absolutely aware of the fact that it's difficult to find someone that you want to collaborate with. One solution or one idea that we had is initiating platforms. So there have been different kinds of platforms with different focuses. For example, we had one in Bangkok. We had a theater platform in Berlin. We had one in Johannesburg. So these are places and spaces really that are absolutely open, and where artists can encounter and get to know each other and maybe create an idea, but it's not a prerequisite that they come out of this workshop and they have a co-production idea. But still, it's one possibility to meet and yeah, to get to know each other. This is our homepage. So if you're interested, you are absolutely welcome to visit goethe.de/IKF. You can find all the aspects that I was talking about on this website. You can also see the projects that we funded so far. And yeah, if you want to contact us, then you're absolutely welcome. My dear colleague Natalie Feldman and me, we can answer your questions. So I'm looking forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Isumi. That was wonderful. André, are you still here? Yes.
Yes, I'm here in the coffee shop.
You're back. So would you want to be the next to talk about your projects?
Sure. What do you want me to talk about? I didn't prepare a presentation as nice as the previous one, but what I could do is take you through our website and talk about some of the things that we've been doing. But I think you primarily want to know about our digital mobility fund.
I think just maybe present Concerts SA and what are you been working on, and so we get a rough overview, maybe what is available to artists, I guess in your case, mostly in South Africa.
Yeah. We've been running Concerts SA since about 2013. And of course, the last 2 years have been a bit strange. Since then, we've funded artists for our mobility fund. We've done schools programs. We do workshops and seminars, and we do research. To date, we funded over 12,000 artists, 2,000 in the last year, looking at all our programs. But in the last year, the thing that received the most traction was our digital mobility fund. The digital mobility fund, like in the past, it was physical mobility, covered the whole of the SADC region. However, now we can't do that anymore. So we then decided to do some research in July last year. It was called Digital Futures. And that was while we were trying to figure our way through what exactly we could do in terms of pivoting. So the research on digital futures is available on our website. And that was a study as to how can artists benefit from streaming, what are the platforms out there, what are the revenue models, what are the copyright kind of stuff that needs to be done, and how this all works. Of course, it was July last year. We had no bloody clue how it would work. So we were like shooting in the dark. From having done that research, we then started our first digital mobility fund in around about October last year. And we did it as a hybrid. Initially, it was about 15,000 Rand for just online concerts. And then those that were online and a little offline, we gave them about 25,000 Rand. Parallel to that, we also did a research study on the impact of COVID on the live music sector. That piece of research we did with the South African Cultural Observatory, and there were 687 respondents. And largely, that research said that we all were buggered. 50% of people in our sector was leaving. Much of the venues were closing. People were selling instruments. And that was November last year. Of course, people are in a worse position now. Following the impact study, which is also available on the website, we then did our next digital mobility fund. And our next digital mobility fund we did between April, May, June this year. And we did that with a grant from the National Arts Council through the presidential employment stimulus package. We got a nice chunk from them, about 200,000 euros that we managed to, actually, no, let me say 2.3 million rand. I don't know what it is in euros. My brain doesn't work that fast. So what we then did was also look at digital mobility, but this time around, we did that at 30,000 rand a grant. The first fund, we got applications of about 130 and 120 qualified, and we could give 40 initially from Norwegian funding. And then we appealed to some Swiss friends, the Levida Foundation, and then we were able to give about 63. And of course, with the complications, only 61 took place, 2 were cancelled. The next time we did it with the National Arts Council funds, we had about 401 applications, and we could also give 63 grants in terms of the online and digital mobility. And then now in September, we managed to do another digital mobility fund, and we received 431 applications. So either people are getting to know more about the fund, so there's increased traction and increased asking, and there's of course increased desperation. And of the 431, we managed to give 70 grants of 30,000 rand each, and we're busy running that process between now and January, actually now and December this year. All the concerts will be taking place between now and December. And the idea is that now, because the restrictions have reduced, we can have more people that can actually attend the events. So we're funding hybrid events, which is small audiences with digital participation. Because we don't know if there's going to be a fourth wave. You know, one doesn't know how many times this COVID's going to wave at us. So the idea is that small audiences, live streamed events, with the hope that there's no fourth wave, and that we can then catalyze people going back to see real live music performed in South Africa. Next year, if borders open up a bit more, we will start to look at more, not just streaming, but actual mobility, and actual mobility in Southern Africa. But that depends on where things go with this lovely little virus that we have. The other thing that we're doing is a venues fund. We've been doing the venues fund, as I said, since about 2013. So in the next week or two, we're going to develop a subsidy for venues to be able to apply and for promoters to be able to apply. And that will be in 3 of the regions or provinces in South Africa: Western Cape, Gauteng, which is like Johannesburg, and KZN Durban, and working with promoters, universities, as well as venues in particular. And this is a little bit of a sad one, because many promoters have closed down, and many venues have closed down, and quite a few promoters have also left the sector. So it's also about a subsidy that incentivizes and catalyzes people to start putting gigs together again. So those are some of the stuff that we're doing, Stefanie.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. And then André, are you, for example, I think you already do a really beautiful work for South Africa and Southern African artists. Are you in contact, for example, with other countries, institutions to run similar programs in other countries, for example?
Most definitely. We've been talking to people for the last, 10 years as well. We've been attending conferences and talking to people and trying to build a connection. So we're in direct contact with George and them from the Hiva Fund in Nairobi. And they're also looking at funding artists and funding creatives in the region. And the British Council, we started off our mobility funding with the British Council funds, and now they're also developing mobility funds in the region. We've also been talking to Gita Kaldi from Africana and they've been doing mobility as well as artist support within North Africa. And then we've got direct relations with the guys in Mali, the African Culture Fund, Mahmoud Dafe and his team, and they've been developing interesting projects and programs for artist relief. And I think they'll also be looking at mobility in the future. So definitely the idea is to unlock the potential within the continent and the bigger players, not necessarily government. I'm a little bit jaded having worked with government at local, provincial and national level. So I rather want to work with donors and funders and private sector organizations. So what we'd love to be able to see is to link up a range of different players. If it's Goethe and the GIZ, if it's the French institutes and the AFD, because we need to talk to them. If it's the European Union, and then also working closely with Music in Africa, who I know for a little while, and working with them to see how we build regional touring networks again, how we start to build regional and continental mobility, intercontinental, and not just taking people abroad. It's great to go abroad, but sometimes it's easier to access funds to go to Germany, the UK, or the Netherlands than to go to a country next door. So those are things we've been talking to partners about.
Okay, so actually this discussion really makes sense, you know, to strengthen these networks and, you know, put more attention to these conversations. Maybe I want to ask Violet if she's still there to come back to the discussion, because you mentioned Music in Africa and Violet Music in Africa. So maybe you can just also tell us and the people who are going to be hopefully watching this little panel here later on, what Africa is doing for them who don't know. Violet,
can you hear me?
Yeah.
Are you able to hear me? Okay, super. So yes, so as the Music in Africa Foundation, there's sort of twofold of what we do. In general, we have an online portal or online website that is used as a really good reference point for content around African music in particular. It's also a great networking platform for African musicians to put on their profiles and content around what they do on our site, but then that also then gives them an opportunity for them to sort of network with the bigger picture. And then one of the key things that we do is we run a number of what we call offline projects that are projects that directly support musicians, whether it's through grants and funds or around projects that are designed for capacity building. There's a few and they've kept us quite busy for the past year. We've been quite, I guess, privileged to be able to offer this number of funding and grant opportunities for artists. All we see, obviously, specifically in music, but one of our most current projects is actually starting to work a little bit within the spoken word space, which is something that's kind of become a point of interest, I think, since Mr. Joe Biden's inauguration, that, you know, spoken word got presented as something different and something quite impactful. So some of the projects that I'm going to run you through that we do is we obviously have Access, which is our sort of flagship, which is our conference for networking and showcases. We obviously always hosted in a different African country each year, and we're scheduled to go to Tanzania last year in 2020, but due to COVID, had to kind of relook and see how we do that. And so Access will happen, for example, in Johannesburg this year at the end of November. And that allows for African musicians, African promoters, general industry practitioners, and globally to register to participate in Access, generally through sort of, you know, there's a panel element of it, there's a panel and discussion element, but for the artists in particular targeted, there's opportunities to showcase. We've been able to establish relationships with, for example, the Rögner Festival in Hamburg, where they are a partner in Access and will be able to bring a delegation to South Africa of practitioners, bookers, promoters, festival programmers, etc. Even record label executives to then come to South Africa for access to be able to then have the opportunity to see the showcases and see the talent that is not only South African musicians, but musicians from across the continent. So that's really, you know, and then within the context of access, there's also then workshoppings and a lot of networking opportunities for artists in that sense and for the industry at large. Other projects that we have running currently is a project called Music in Africa Live, which is funded by Siemens Stiftung, who's sort of our key funder as the foundation. What that allows, we're actually able to do the second iteration of that project. Music in Africa Live is a grant that allows musicians to, or music organizations to apply, and specifically around them putting on digital content, digital showcases. There's a few elements to that, in that it's again not only focused on showcasing and performance, but there is an element and grants dedicated to capacity building within the sector. And then also a new addition to that project this year was some funding towards music advocacy. So projects that are aimed at finding a way to do some advocacy with artists around the industry, so that we're able to start to find ways to affect and speak to policies across the continent. Again, it's a project that's open for application, and a grant that's open for applications for the entire continent at large. So we have that going, and what that then allows us to do is to also again building towards content that we will then broadcast on our platforms of those performances that the applicants or recipients would then create. And also again looking and broadening ways to find partners who would be willing to broadcast that content as well. So there's an interesting element of that, the creative license around those projects, around those productions, so to speak, sits, you know, the onus of that creativity sits with the applicants. And so it's an interesting project and process for us to engage in kind of vet quality and content and see what, you know, because we have no control or can give guidelines only around the production of those showcases and workshops. So that's Music in Africa Live. We've just also in the middle of a project that will end at the end of October. It's called Music and Words, and this came from a collaboration with the EU delegation to South Africa, as well as the CRP. And what that was that what that project is to find, just again, creating platforms for specifically South African targeted. And I think this is an interesting thing for us, is that we're always doing things that are not just because we're based in South Africa, doesn't necessarily mean that all our projects operate within that space, but we're able, based on who we partner with, we're able to sort of spread out the region and what areas we can reach. So the Music and Words project is a music and poetry based project where, again, through finding ways to utilize the digital space, because that's where we find ourselves, musicians and poets, spoken word artists are able to again apply to digitally showcase. But this is what's quite interesting about this, that the showcasing is happening to a European market, so to speak. So we have a network of European festival programmers in particular, because the end game is that of these applicants, a number of them, maximum of about 5, would have the opportunity to then take their product and tour across Europe. So we are currently just finalizing a short list of 10 artists that would then showcase via a sort of virtual market space that we're calling. And from that, a selection of 5 would be made for them to then go and tour, hopefully once things lighten up and ease up at the end of December in 2021. So that's the 2022, I beg your pardon. So that's quite that's quite an interesting space for us, because now we're sort of tapping into that spoken word place, which is very well linked with the music, but again, great platforms or great art forms to really to really just kind of showcase and show out to a global audience. Another project we work on, I said there's a lot, is a project called Indigenous, we call it in IBR, which is around instrument building and repair, but specifically focused on African instruments. So it is around helping artists to just to keep the craft and maintain the craft of building indigenous instruments, but also then finding a way and teaching participants to repair those instruments with an end goal of, once people have the skill and understanding, they find a way to monetize. So that again is something that would generally be open to all African musicians, to all African practitioners within the indigenous knowledge system space. And so again, we would have a process of application, select 2 interesting instruments, not just within our region, but not just within SADC or in South Africa, but across the continent, have a workshop of bringing masters of that craft, of that instrument, that then train about up to 20 to 25 trainees around those instruments. And those workshops are not only just the practicalities of building and repairing, but it's also, like I said, teaching them how to monetize them via like learning how to fix them. And then also a big element for us is that once that knowledge is gained, and that way there's a way to then take that knowledge and lessons from that training into a space of moving it into the community and sharing that kind of content. So there's quite a lot in that way, and that's just a number of the kind of projects we do. Again, like André said, it's really important for us to find ways that we connect what we do with other organizations like IKS and Constance, and really find suitable ways where we can still continue to grow on our projects and really try and have a bigger impact. For a highlight for us in this year as the Music in Africa Foundation is we received funding from the EU ACP, which was a huge deal for us, to develop again projects that not necessarily only in the music space, but also that cover other art forms. So we have a project currently running that will be running for the next 3 years within the foundation, called the Sound Connect Fund. And Music in Africa was sort of the initial call from the EU was within sort of 4 lots of the continent, and Music in Africa got the funding for the southern region for Sound Connect, and that was the name of the project. And that project is huge. It's a financially quite a big responsibility on our side, which is a great deal for us in general, to be able to make sure that a project of that nature and that kind of gravitas works. Again, this is a project that supports a variety of projects and ideas and concepts around within the sector. So it's not specific to music, it's theater, visual arts. So it's really been quite interesting for us to frame this project so in a way that it's impactful. And what we've done is within that project, we're able to offer grants within a number of categories where I think the maximum amount an organization could get funding is up to 180,000 euros and a minimum of 30,000 euros. So they also again opens the scope of types of organizations that could apply and what they deliver. That call out for those, I think it's 11 grants for the first year that we put out, will be interesting to see. We've already made a selection, and it will be quite interesting to share the content and see what people are able to do. Again, it's only specific to SADC, and it's been interesting to try and show the diversity of the region between sort of Franco, like Anglophone countries, countries of sort of Portuguese origin in Mozambique and Angola, specifically in the Southern Africa region, involving smaller countries such as Lesotho and Swaziland within that mix. So for us to have been able to get the diversity of region and language has been quite a task, but really, really quite positive about the impact of this project that we have going at with via the Sound Connect. So I think I'll stop there because that's quite a mouthful from me. And like I said, yeah, we are quite busy and now in the throngs of access, which just adds quite interesting dynamics to what we're doing. I will leave it there for some questions.
Okay, thank you, Violet, so much. I mean, it was a lot of information, but yes, we can see that there's a lot of things, happening and going on. I would maybe want to ask some artists, do you know about these programs? Have you accessed some of them? How easy is it for you? And what are your current needs, especially due to the current situation with the pandemic? Maybe George, maybe Tofa, Mrs. And Masa, I don't know if she's still there. She said she had to go to school as well, fetch her son. But yeah, maybe George, you can start and let us know, have you access to funding? How easy is it for you to get this? Have you applied? What do you need at this current point of time?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. And thank you very much. With regards to funding, I have not really accessed funding yet, even though I tried, I tried applying about twice. So I'm very excited about this whole conversation and the opportunities available. It has actually opened my eyes to, diverse ways of receiving funding for my band. My band over the years has been self-funded, as maybe Stefanie and Julia know. We've been self-funded for some time now, and at a point we got comfortable doing it. But the disadvantage of that was that we were not able to do bigger projects because our resources are very limited. So it makes the size of our projects very small to medium. But as a band, we really hope to engage in very big projects and collaborations. So we are very excited about this conversation, and definitely would go into it and see the type of funding we can access to, have bigger projects sometimes later next year.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Tofa, are you still there? Or Masa? You have to unmute.
Okay. Well, I've just, just listening to all the organizations that are providing different types of funding, it's really great. And also, like, I guess, like George, it's eye-opening, and to hear that there's so many. And I have a question though before I go further to André, Concert South Africa, to say what is sort of like the streamlining process for the types of funding you give. Is it strictly for South African artists or for the SADC region? And what is the process like of, being picked or, streamlining the process?
Sorry, I've got a bit of a cough. Firstly, just responding, most bands are self-funded. I mean, in South Africa and across the continent. And for us, we often prefer to see the contributions we make either to venues or to artists and through the programs that we do as subsidies rather than funding. Because sometimes funding smacks of a kind of dependency model. And for us, it's very important to say, okay, we're subsidizing, so make a contribution so we can see the kinds of partnerships. In terms of getting, to get the initial, and what you're asking about is to get the big amount of applications down to the ones that you fund. It is extremely heartbreaking. You sit there with 130 applications in the first round. You sit there with this panel of adjudicators with 431 applications. And in the first round, you've got to reduce it to 63. In the last round, we had to reduce it from 431 to 70. In the first round, what we were able to do is when we got to the stage of reducing it to 40, and it's based on the quality of applications, realistic budgets, are there partnerships in place? Artistically, is it quite good? Sorry, they want me to put on my video. I don't look that good anyway. So there's the criteria gets refined as we go along, but really realistic budgets, realistic projects and the realistic project plans, artistic relevance, because some not all music is good, and then the traction that you get, and the willingness to actually shape an interesting project. So the adjudicators, of course, have different biases. We don't tell people who our adjudicators are because they are active in the music industry. Imagine you were on our adjudication panel and you didn't approve the band that you're playing with. You'd stop playing with them instantly. So the idea is to protect our adjudicators, to protect the panel, and then as the chairman, I would take the knock in the media and to others. So that's the process of whittling it down. Our projects currently, because our borders were shut down, are primarily South African. But in the past, we definitely looked at the SADC region and we covered 11 countries within the SADC region. We would love to not only cover the SADC region, we would love to be able to build partnerships. As I was saying to Stefanie earlier, it would be great to have good partnerships in East Africa. And we're looking at some of the guys in Tanzania, some of the guys in Kenya, some of them in Tanzania, Hiva in Kenya. And if there are others, it would be good to chat to them. Within West Africa, we're talking to some of the people, talking directly to some of the Goethe people, Philip, and the people that are running stuff there, and some of the programs there. And of course, in North Africa, I mentioned we're looking at Africana with Gita. And in Mali, we're looking at Mamu and those guys, because the African Culture Fund is growing exceptionally well. So for us, it's not about how big can we be on Concerts SA on the continent. It's about how can we build collaborative projects that has value, that other people see. How can we tweak our models? And if anyone says to me, Music in Africa came to us and said, we want to build a mobility fund. And I said to the guys who were working with us at the time, give them all the documentation they need. If we can assist in building the models of best practice and good models, we will work with whoever is on the continent to build inter-regional touring once again, once we are able to do it a little bit better.
I want to jump into this quickly, André. Maybe there is really like a need for a conference to bring everybody who is working on funding institutions on the continent and who is active really together on one table. You know, I feel there is a need, because I have to tell you from my experience working as a manager and as an agent, and I would want to bring Marcus in there quick in a minute, is that sometimes you go in the internet and you do your research for, okay, which funds are available. The information to be found is very tricky to find. There is one website which collects information, but it's not very, a lot of the things are old, they're not up to date, some of them are not even there. It's really hard in a jungle to really find the decent information. Besides Music in Africa, they are sharing a lot of every time the new programs. But if you have like a need, let's say your artist is invited from country A, from South Africa, to go to Tanzania to play at a festival, and you are now currently looking at a travel fund because the fee is not enough to really, you know, make the show worthwhile. It's hard to find these things, and I wonder why. And maybe there is a need to put more of this together and collaborate. Marcus, maybe you can tell us also a little bit about, for example, working with the band on the ground, Mukumba. I mean, we've also heard the saying that all these bands are self-funded, or a lot of these bands, most of them are self-funded. So self-funded means what? Over the last years, these bands were able to fund themselves through touring. Touring hasn't happened for 1.5 years. Local concerts haven't happened nearly to zero. Streaming 1 or 2 shows in 1.5 years. So what is the situation on your side?
Sorry, Stefanie, before you go ahead, when I said self-funded, I didn't say funding through touring. That would have been extremely weird in an environment where there was no touring. So that's not what I necessarily meant. Secondly, you said a conference where everyone comes together. That conference exists. It's called the Access Conference. For us, most of us come together to speak, and it's great to get together with artists and managers and to different parts of the value chain. But if you really want to do something effectively, perhaps you need to think about getting the funders together in one room,
That's
getting
what
the
I
right
meant.
programs together in. That's not what you said, but
Okay.
that's what you need to do
Yes.
within those fora, because you need to be able to build those models together, and you can't necessarily build it with artists in the room.
I meant to bring the funders together, but I still feel, André, that yes, artists or managers need to be part of this discussion, because that's my question. How do you otherwise build, and know really the needs of them? You need to involve them. I think we need to come together, all together. That's my personal opinion. But yes, I definitely think that there is a great need for all the funding institutions who are active on the continent, which do a great job, without doubt, to really come together. I think it would be wonderful. Yeah.
So can I come in?
Yes.
Please come in, Martin.
Yeah, thanks, André, and thanks, Isumi and Viola, from the wonderful presentations on the opportunities that are currently available for African musicians and African organizations working in the industry. My response, Stefanie, would maybe take us back a little bit, because in 2010 I wrote a paper in collaboration with a friend of mine called Eugene Ullman, and we were looking at funding models that were available at the time, and have been continuously looking at how that has changed over time, and there has been improvements. And it's great hearing from what André presented on how they are now tailoring concepts to funding to the needs on the ground right now. That there is some improvement, but where I would start from is to say, as a common sort of experience, funding at local level has not been readily available for artists. So local sources for funding in a lot of African countries, or at least the ones that I've been to, is very scant. And government support also in a lot of African countries like ours is very scant. And what that does is that it leaves external funding as the only most viable option. And so international either organizations, NGOs, cultural organizations are the ones that are dominant in the funding space in most of the African countries that I'm referring to, including ours. And the downside, I think, is the top-down nature of the grant making, which is that a lot of the decisions as to what to fund, how to fund it, is coming from the top down instead of the bottom up. So when, Stefanie, you're talking about listening to artists and listening to local organizations, there isn't enough of that happening. When the call comes, it's just a call that comes to say, apply for this, but there hasn't been enough consultation, I think, to say, is that the most urgent need on the ground? And I mean, some would even say it's not even the mandate of those funders to care about what is urgent on the ground right now. So the funding imperatives usually would target issues that are important to the funder. So for example, you have a call, and in our context, we started having more calls about responding to climate change, responding to the environment, responding to HIV/AIDS, responding to any other pressing sort of social issue or developmental issue. And I get the lure I get the lure of organizations wanting to partner with artists to say, send messages. But approaching artists only as a vehicle for sending messages undercuts also their ability to express themselves freely. So at the extreme ends of this, we can compare government censorship overt to this kind of funding approach, where now you are saying that we're only going to support something that supports our agenda and speaks to a certain way. So the results that I've seen are really bad. on the ground, where the applications become also a box ticking exercise. So you really have to then just be responding to the call as opposed to having any artistic integrity or quality attached to the response. The other downside has been that there's a lot of creation of winners and losers in the African context, where the people who are really good at responding to these calls and writing grants and have connections and have traveled or have a good passport end up cleaning up all these grants, and they are the winners, whereas everyone who is doing it for real on their own, whether you call it self-funded or whatever, are having to struggle because then they can't have the right kind of equipment, they can't have the right kind of marketing to compete with these winners, and they don't have the international access and travel to match. So, and that creates also unhealthy competition around grants and grant making, where then people become competitive instead of collaborating within a country, right? There is a lot of competition around grants, and also very much the separation between the Francophone, the Anglophone, the Lusophone, because the centers are different. So people who are in Portugal, people who are in Angola and Mozambique, their links would be more with Lisbon and the funding that comes with that. People who are in Francophone would be in Paris with the links that come with that. And it's just kind of an example, but I've seen this play out a lot. So I think the long-term sustainability of projects really needs, I think, a more inward sort of approach where there are so many connections on the continent. And I mean, I'm happy that there are all these other sort of platforms and forums like Access, you say, André, that are now on the continent, and people have maybe a space to communicate and develop maybe the right kind of links and infrastructure, if I can put it that way, that is responsive to the needs on the ground immediately. And I mean, there's no denying that the need is huge, but I think the approach has to shift a little bit from a sort of funder-centric sort of top-down approach to finding ways to distribute this sort of urgency and power, and that way future grants will be crafted in a way that respond not only to local needs, but respect also the difference that is there between countries and all that, so, and cultures and all the kinds of things that need to be considered. So that's my take. Without like wasting too much time, I feel like our experience with working with Mukumba speaks to a lot of that, where we have had to really struggle and try to find our own ways to make things happen. Even when I run a gallery which we are to speed up to become self-sufficient by actually selling instead of responding to grants, because we always found that our growth, a lot of grants are not pro artists making money. The moment you mention that you're going to make money through anything that you're doing, then you're out, right? It's more than a question of, say, how do you expect people to have maybe some kind of seed funding to do their projects, get to sustainability that way, as opposed to becoming dependent actually by waiting for grant cycle after grant cycle. So there are all these issues. I mean, I'm just throwing it out there, but there are all these issues that I feel like we still continuously need to discuss, and maybe it's kind of maybe not the right platform, but I'm just thinking that that conversation can't go ahead without looking at these issues. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Marcus. I just wanted to give Tofa a little bit of space because he texted me that he is actually struggling with data. Something which is a complete normal actually issue we are dealing with African artists every day, even access to data, access to electricity, or even afford data. And so Tofa, you are an emerging singer-songwriter from Tanzania. What is your current situation, and what is your current need actually? Let me unmute you. You have to unmute. Yeah.
Hey guys. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me here. I'm learning so much, and getting exposed with all this funding stuff, which I might have been needing this information. But in my country, as of lately, and I may say throughout my music career, I've mostly been depending on live shows in my home country, to fund my stuff, my content, have like recording sessions, and maybe travel to a different country for more visibility and find more venues and stuff like that. But we don't have enough local organization that support funding for artists. We don't have enough of that. So it's been quite a struggle to achieve bigger projects, like George said, or also the previous speaker spoke about. Sometimes you may achieve a certain level of fund and still not be able to sustain yourself or achieve some sort of financial independence to continue creating, or just continue creating and working on the music. So I guess that's what has been happening mostly still. And with the pandemic, so it's very hard with the ongoing pandemic, it's very hard to perform or make more money, like a money circulation, so as I could create more content and other bigger projects, or tour around and travel. So it's honestly been quite a struggle, and but I'm happy to have been exposed to this. So I guess this is a good step for me to apply on these different funding programs, and I guess this could be a beginning for something for me. And I'm really lucky to have Stefanie and Julia, part of my team based in Germany. And I don't remember her name. Let me read. Oh, Isumi. Spoke about Isumi from Goethe Institut. She presented us her funding program, and I think I will definitely hop on that, and music in Africa and all what we've spoke today. It's really interesting, and I guess it will help me tackle and obtain some things. Yeah.
And Tofa, one more thing. What you really need to be funded right now in your current situation?
Basically is content creation, like music albums, music videos, marketing, promo, stuff like that. And I'm a musician full-time. I don't do any other thing. It's just music for me. So definitely I want to make I want to have some sort of a return in my music, a financial return, so I could create more. And for now, it's very hard to achieve that, because just like any other business, for your product to sell, you need some sort of funding to push it out there in the market. So I guess it's what I'm the struggle I'm going through right now. So.
All right, thanks. I would like to bring in Jay. Jay, you run a German record label, and you mentioned that you have a funding program with a Somalian band. You are producing, I think you get that from Initiative Musik, which is a German funding institution based here in Germany.
Is right, yeah.
But do you think Initiative Musik would be something applicable for Tofa?
I don't know.
Because I will tell you.
Because put it this way, it depends. I have another comment to make just up front.
Okay.
There are many German musicians struggling to make a living. There are many German musicians wishing they could apply for a fund to do promo for their work. So I just wanted to mention that it's because it seems so as if it was a very special situation. I think artists around the world, it is difficult for an artist to get heard generally. It is definitely easier in Germany maybe to survive as an artist because you have loads of possibilities in the cultural sector to attach yourself to. I have loads and loads of friends, you know, who started out with a band, they toured, they were very excited. The usual way that it goes is they might, you know, end making music for theater production when they're sort of over 40, and then when they're over 50, is sort of that is not, you know, doesn't have enough zeitgeist if you're over 50 to still play in a theater production. You know, it's a usual kind of career. I also want to respond to what Marcus said, which I was really which I found really interesting, because I've also been on juries about cooperation projects, and there's a lot of, how did you call it? I really like that word, Marcus. Something with box ticking.
Yeah, box ticking.
Yeah, exactly, box ticking. I really like that word. Very true. Yeah, I think very true that certain things sort of make it because people then get excited and very interested in these topics. And then, you know, as you know, I also work as a journalist, you get these calls, hey, we need a female artist from Somalia who has problems with religious authorities. Do you know anybody? It's like, yeah, I don't know. You know, if you would be really in the topic, you'd probably know somebody. And then you know, make some research. So I think it touches on a lot of issues. I do feel at the same time, and I also feel that when I listen to you, Topha, that there's a certain excitement, which I think is natural, in attaching to international touring, in attaching also to working with, let's say, a German institution. You know, we've released, you know, African music, starting, you know, with hip life and bongo flavor and all that stuff. You know, like sort of music. You know, trying to present styles that were are very popular in regions in Africa. You know, from Kwaito to Afro House to bongo flavor to whatever, and there's a lot of excitement there, but some of this music travels, some of the music doesn't travel. Meaning, you know, there's a huge German hip hop scene, and comments we sometimes got were, I'm just telling that because I like the comment of, you know, music critics here saying, you know, come on, Jay, we don't listen to Chinese reggae either. So the question would be to you, Topha, do you listen to Chinese reggae? You know, so there's a lot going on in this, and there's a lot of, there's sometimes the discussion about cultural exchange sort of switches to a sort of in a moral domain. But I think there's just some basic context and some basic difficulties in music traveling. So we as a label, we have kind of become to think that our role as a German label releasing African music also is to voice what would work in this market, because an African artist is basically leaving his market in a way and trying to play or seeing if his music cannot maybe work in a European market. So I think our role too is to bring the artist in a discussion of what might work, because you don't want to spend, you know, hopes and energy on something that in the end might just not, you know, attach to something, to some zeitgeist or something, some actual market out there, because that would mean you're wasting your hopes and energies. So I think that's part of the role. To give you an example, if let's say a rapper from Nairobi does a featuring with a Jamaican superstar, everybody in Nairobi will talk about it, but for the Jamaican artist, it's like a little small feature somewhere back that he's not even thinking of releasing it. you know. So should we then, every journalist in Nairobi would say, you have to release that track here because everybody's so excited about it, and we would say, yeah, well, people here are just going to listen to the, you know, main album of that Jamaican artist, and if musically it's not something really exciting, then you know, why bother? So there's some okay, what do you make out of a discussion like that? You could either say, what is this white guy from this white guy who runs a German label trying to tell me? But I think that also misses the point. So that's sort of the context I wanted to sort of lay out, and at the same time, I think that makes this. I realize now, you know. First, I was in a jury by a big German cultural fund, and I was really fighting hard to make people understand that basically these juries that want to support cultural projects, what they're very often talking about is what we in Germany call high culture. That meaning literature, theater, fine arts, stuff like that. So now, like everybody I see on the screen here is working in the domain of what we would call popular culture. So if you're working in popular culture, everything is commercial. Like if Stefanie organizes a concert in Germany, it is a commercial concert. She has to come up with the money. She has to go to a venue. The venue has to be willing to pay X amount of money. And then she can do the concert. Only if she really goes out of her, comfort zone and really fights hard, she can get some extra funding to support that tour. But generally the same applies to all the, to all the venues. They have to make sure that enough people come so they don't lose money. Yeah. So now at the same time, people have the feeling that, music from Africa is something, that should happen here and people should see it. And if a famous African artist is touring in Europe, that's culturally really interesting. And it transports culture, understanding of culture. If you go there, you can get a feel for what people are interested in, up to, and so forth and so forth. So these institutions, these cultures feel a need to sustain that. But this thing, and to help. What we feel is, like I had this morning, I had a long discussion about the problem that if, as a record label, we do a project and we have a record in the end, then that is commercial. Meaning it keeps generating money for the artist. But the project goes for 2 years. After 2 years, it is over. What about, let's say I make a record and I keep having to press the record. I have costs. With those costs, I have to pay royalties to the artist. I have to pay money to the GEMA there, but I also have an income. So it's very complicated for these institutions to deal with that. Because, and it's a structural problem, that type of culture is put is commercial in Germany. It's a commercial market that works after commercial principles. There's not like you have a theater and the theater has staff of 30 people. They're all paid by the state. The building is paid by the state. The program is funded by by state money. So that's a problem, a specific problem that we face in this market, and that, for instance, I face as a label. We've released, I don't know, 35 records with music from all over Africa, and they're all, the record is, this is my money, and this is the money we made by the records. And all I can say is, it is getting tight with all the streaming stuff, yeah. And the CD market is crumbling and tumbling. And if you only get an income by streaming, many labels, in my opinion, will go because it's just not worth it. So also we have started to apply for cultural money to sustain the work that we do. Because if I make a production, recording an album worth, and I want it to be worth listening to, meaning, or, the artist has to work, has to go to the studio, and you have to pay a studio, you have to pay the musicians and stuff. If you want a production that, let's say, the production of a record by Makunda, you have to spend some money. Where's this money going to come from? It used to come from the record company in part. Now, there you cannot come up with, whatever, 5,000 euros, 3,000 euros, maybe, to record an album that works on the European world music scene. That is a problem, in my opinion, because that scene still works around releases. So, the festivals see that there's a record on the people talk and write about. It's a new record. Let's say Tofa, you release a record here. People are really excited. They think it's really cool. So everybody's, who's Tofa? I have a festival for African music. Can I book the guy? I really like his music. So I always say the record labels face the problem of becoming promo agencies with no income. So that's basically the situation we are in, where we're sort of stuck in the commercial sector and trying, you can see if you go to these trade fairs, you can see actually maybe the people who are quotation marks making money, or maybe the people who run the festival, the trade fair. People who really make an impact at these trade fairs are maybe funded by regional governments. You have whatever stand sponsored by the Spanish cultural minister, and they get a lot of money. So all the artist group there at these stands, the French are very prominent here too. The Germans don't really have that, unfortunately. These are all sort of problems we kind of face, which have become more difficult. Now, I'm talking as a record label. And I'm talking as somebody who's now not sort of in the jury, but, who has a fund. And now I'm talking to the people as the person who is sort of affected, which again changes things, And because I have to deal with the problem of, am I going to do a project that lasts half a year and that takes my time and energy too, where I have a lot of responsibility, ending up with a record owned in a way, or co-owned by the institution funding this project. Because, if I have rights, a right is something like, let's say you buy a video beamer and the video beamer is still there after the project. You will have to give it back, or you sell it, and that money that you get goes back to the funding in Germany, if it in that type of fund. If I have rights, theoretically the same way, which is a huge problem, because I keep working for this record, but and I keep paying maybe for stuff if I repress, but theoretically the money has to go to the institution who funded that, because they say money coming in, that reduces the money they have spent to make this project happen. Sounds very complicated, I know, but I hope I could give you yeah. But those are real problems that in at the moment that we are facing. I hope this was not too confusing, but I tried to touch on some things that sort of touch me.
That's fine. I think, André, you raised your hand. Do you want to speak? André?
Hi, Stefanie. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello.
Mayday, you are there.
Huh?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. I'm going to try. Cool. Sorry, the network's a bit funny, so I'm going to put off my video. It is off. Okay, let me put it back off again. I ran down the road to get to a coffee shop without my charger, so my computer might die. So I'm just going to run through some quick responses to stuff. Yeah. Firstly, it's hard being a funder. If you sit with 430 applications and you can find 70, you've only made 70 friends. So by the time you get to the bar down the road or the coffee shop and one of the other 431 see you, you're in trouble. So it's really hard being a funder and a donor because there's small pots of money available to be able to give. It's hard being an artist in Germany and in Europe. I understand things are difficult, but I've looked at the over $1 billion in spending on culture in the UK, in Germany, and in many of the developing countries. Such funds hardly exist, actually don't exist on the African continent. The incentives don't exist, the relief funds don't exist, and many artists are not going to survive this period. One of the saddest things for me is walking past the pawn shops, not porn as in pornography, porn where people sell instruments, and the amount of good quality instruments that are there says how bad things really are. So it's really a little bit more difficult on the African continent than in European countries. One of the things we also need to consider is what are we talking about when we're talking about funding, whether it's access to funding, local, city, town, village, regional, district, because often we talk about donor funding primarily, and we don't talk about being able to grow the pot of funds available. We talk about EU funding, which is great, but we don't talk about comparative EU funding. So some of us need to get together to talk about how we build the pots of funding and how we leverage and lobby and advocate at local level for things to happen. So there's a research tool that we compiled, which was It Starts With a Heartbeat, which is about lobbying local government to support for music. Another thing that Marcus spoke about was about culture as self-expression, rather than culture as being instrumentalized. We had the age of commodification of culture, and now we're in the age of instrumentalizing culture. So it's important for donors, local, provincial, national, to look at how they can open up funding for culture to sustain neighborhoods, livelihoods, and communities as well. And long-term sustainability shouldn't be dependent on foreign donors. We really need to get local government, provincial government, and national governments to get there. So, and another thing Marcus said about artists not making money through donor funds, we're totally the opposite. If you apply to us and say you're going to generate income and sell tickets, we're like, big ups, make some big bucks out there. It's about subsidizing your own business model. So before my computer dies, those are some of the things I wanted to put in.
Okay, wonderful. I think there's one person we have been not given yet some word, and it's Tombi. So Tombi is an artist from South Africa, and I would love her to also share a little bit from her side, because it would not be fair to not include you in the discussion. And please, Tombi, can you unmute yourself?
Hi, my name is Ntombi. I'm from Durban, South Africa, from the group Africa Mamas. It is difficult, very difficult in South Africa to be an artist, if I can say. We've been struggling. Our last tour was in 2019, Germany. That was it. The pandemic came, everything falls down. Fortunately, there is Lady Smith Black Mambazo that picked us up in July for a visual concert. Nothing is happening. It's very difficult to get the funding. It is very difficult, especially here in South Africa. There's lots of funds around that we hear people have been funded. But maybe it's the style of music we are doing, because we are a cappella group, all-female a cappella group, and it's very difficult to get funding. I don't know, maybe André can assist us to maybe show us the channels that we can follow to get these fundings, because we've been around for more than 20 years. We've never been funded. Thank you for this opportunity, guys. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Tombi. I think I want to jump into two topics, what Jay said, and actually also kind of what Marcus said. Is the first thing is that a lot of the funds which are out there are kind of created for artists to make art, but not enable them to earn. And in the end of the day, this is an economy. We do this for business. Artists do that for business, not only for expressing their art. Yes, they have that urge and desperation, and it's something also very beautiful, but in the end of the day, they need to make a business and a living out of this. And a lot of these programs sometimes support, as you say, want them to create more, but not enable them to make money. And the second thing Jay said, he's gone now, but as a record label, and I know it from my side, and it's just like sharing my experience. Jay, you are extremely lucky, for example, that you got that fund now with Initiative Musik. But I think it's because you're a German record label and you're working together with a German producer or a songwriter. If you are a German record label and you want to produce an album with an African band, you cannot apply for these funds. And there is actually not really programs for these kind of, let's say, really basic basics. And I feel the pandemic now has thrown us back, and we kind of need basics again, producing albums, producing videos, hiring PR agents, things like this, where I think Isumi, your project comes in where people maybe already have, decent content to jump into a project like this. Or then also, as was Jay mentioned, sometimes we are forced to create projects because of the calls which are there, but maybe, and I think this was a little bit also our motivation why to bring, a discussion together, is to look back and see, can we maybe start a conversation again about the calls, about the needs, and bring everybody on the table. And I'm really kind of motivated, André, what you said as well, to maybe start a bigger campaign that we really make, bring everybody who is active in the funding on the continent and build a stronger network, strengthen it, and develop, something positive out of it. So that's just something for kind of my side. Isumi?
Yes, thank you. I feel like I should reply to all those comments and questions. So yeah, I can maybe, well, first of all, thank you so much for speaking so openly, because this is very important for us as the Goethe Institute as well, to see your reality, to see your needs, and to see what you're struggling with. I can just, it sounds like I'm defending the Goethe Institute, but you have to know that we are connected to the German government. So all the money comes from the foreign ministry, and it's basically German taxes. So we have, well, our fund is limited actually to what you said, Jay, the cultural scene. So it's we can't support so-called commercial projects, and this goes as well to structural support. So for example, if you have the beamer, or if you have the technical equipment that you need to buy for your project, we are officially not allowed to fund that. So what we can fund is that you rent something and that you give it back. But of course, this is it's absolutely clear that this is not the reality that you live in. And as I said, the fund is now was established 5 years ago, and actually we are talking about adjustments. We have to change things, but in what kind of way can we react to the necessities of the artists abroad, and still be in the limited restriction, or the restrictions that basically the foreign ministry gives us. There are other kinds of funding as well. Last year, a conglomeration of the Goethe Institute, but also the DAAD, the German academic, the exchange program, Siemens and other big firms, they created the International Relief Fund, which is actually reacting to the COVID pandemic, because it enables structural funding. So with this program, institutions and small organizations can apply and ask for structural funding. So for paying their staff, paying all the costs that they can't pay right now. So this might be a little idea of other new ways of support. But please never stop talking about this, because this is why I'm here and why I'm very glad to listen to all those problems that you have, the needs that you have. So thank you very much.
Okay, so I think we should, I don't know if anyone wants to contribute some more, or should we wrap up slowly? Because I really appreciate that everybody took so much time, and have a little conclusion, maybe as a goal, what we took out of this conversation and panels. So there's definitely great projects out there, and a lot of really great people who are working on these things. And I think I read your message, André. I don't think it's about tearing each other down. Instead, it's about really, coming together and talking and creating more and taking positive experiences from each other. What does work, what doesn't work, what is there, what is not there yet, what could be there. I think you are very active and you've done great work, especially with your researches, and where other people can also benefit from. So yeah, maybe just a little last round, everybody 1 sentence, and then we can wrap up if that's okay with you. And maybe I give back to Isumi because she's on my screen next to me.
I take a lot of ideas and questions with me into the next team meeting. And I feel the urge that there is more connection, more networking on the side of the foundations as well, and the institutions. So I would definitely talk about this and try to reach out to institutions like the British Council and so on. And maybe in this round as well, I would be glad if we could exchange, maybe Stefanie, you could send the mailing list, and we should definitely keep in touch. And also you're warmly invited to stay in touch with me and my colleagues, and just let me know if you have questions. And thank you so much.
Wonderful. Jay?
Yeah, thank you as well. I don't really have a final word, but I do think, people understand, if you talk to people at these funds, they do understand the problem of what I mentioned with the commercial side of things. I think we can just keep trying, and maybe get a little bit out of the moral vein, the box ticking mood, and just sort of have, interaction. I think everybody's trying, and an openness to really talk about what the realities on every side are, which is difficult because the funding, yes, it comes from, there's more funding in Europe, and that creates a situation that of a power relation as well that goes very deep, and that one can try to overcome, but it is very difficult, I think, if you're involved in a project, because just the situation, that the context is so different. You can just sort of try. We'll keep trying.
Marcos?
Thank you very much, Stefanie and Julia, for hosting this. And it's a pleasure to meet everyone and to learn from you all. Let's keep in touch. And I agree with Jay. I think we continue to try. We try by doing. So we'll try to also share some of the projects that we are working on and some of the approaches that we have taken to some of these challenges. And maybe they can be already existing models that can add to the conversation and maybe be translatable to other areas as well, into other places. So thank you for this.
Okay, Tombi, you need to unmute.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure meeting you, all of you. Maybe one day we will collaborate with the artists that I see on my screen. Maybe they can come to South Africa for anything they need to collaborate on. Thank you, Steph, and your team for this opportunity. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tombi. Julia?
I'm very happy in general. I was a bit silent, but I wrote, I don't know, pages down. Even if we recorded this session, I see there is a real need to discuss and exchange things, and especially also how to link artist careers and cultural messages to some kind of an economic working business, and not creating through fundings maybe a lot of art, which is needed because we can't live without art, but the artist can't live just from creating art. So I think there is the missing link, maybe that also comes now much more stronger to us because of the pandemic. So I think from the side of Status Culture, that was one of our intentions, to create this organization, and we finally could do one step forward. And I think, Stefanie, we need to continue that talk with all these beautiful people just showed it to me. So I'm very happy and say thank you to everyone.
All right, George. Unmute, please.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right, perfect. I'd like to appreciate you, Stefanie and Julia, for curating this. As I said earlier, it's an eye-opener because myself and my band have been, looking for funding opportunities over the years, and it got to a point we came to a standstill. But this conversation has been an eye-opener for me, and I'm very grateful for this. And it's so nice meeting everyone on this Zoom. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Masa, you're still there. Wow.
I was driving and listening at the same time.
Wow.
And so it's really been great listening to everyone and all the information that has been said here. It's just that when we talk about fun, we talk about like just the creation of the art. And we are not talking about sustaining the artist too, especially in these hard times. So maybe that's something that can be looked into, in the future or now. But meeting everyone here. I hope to work with you further, and Dombi, we should definitely collaborate with George and Tofa, and yeah, thank you guys.
Wonderful. And Violet, are you still there?
I'm still here.
Wonderful.
Yes, I think, just from sort of our perspective, I think it's within our sort of business model to kind of create these opportunities, find these opportunities, so we're able to kind of extend them to musicians across the continent. And I think conversations like this are important. They continue to be important, considering also everything that's happened with COVID. And we really do try and be smart about what kind of ideas we're coming up with, what kind of avenues and platforms for funding and grants we are able to source, so that we can extend the same to musicians across the continent. So I think it'll be interesting times ahead, and we kind of plot through and find ways to really make this work. Thank you, Steph, for this chance. And I think, the more of this we do, the better. And the more the conversations can evolve. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks, Violet. I think André has disappeared. maybe the electricity or the battery. So I would say it's a wrap up. I would say we stay in touch. We try to build, start to build a network out of this, maybe add more people, as two didn't join, like Catherine from British Council, she excused herself, she was sick. And from Jessica, Africa No Filter, I haven't heard, but I'm sure they would have loved to be part of this, and we can see that to extend. And yeah, let us reflect a little bit and then come up with a summary and an email, and then see what can be the next step. So thank you so much, everyone, for your time and dedication, and really appreciate this. I know everybody's tired of Zoom and all these sessions, but yeah, I feel it was important. So thanks so much that you trusted us and that you came along into this conversation, and yeah, let's continue.